Well, last week, recreational cannabis use was legalised in Canada, with pot stocks spiking and sales did so well. Now talking about a potential supply crisis there. Well, joining me in the studio is Battley, COO of Aurora, one of the largest global players in the marijuana industry. Cam, it's great to have your company on the program today. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Just how significant is it, because we've got to talk the industry in Canada first, legalising recreational cannabis, how significant is that for your company and the industry more broadly?
It's extremely significant because it's the first of many to come. So what we're doing in Canada with legalizing the consumer use for adults of cannabis is creating initially a market of $10 to $12 billion a year. That's an important economic opportunity for companies like Aurora in Canada. But the global significance, I think, we'll look back on it and say it was huge because Canada is the first of the G20 countries to legalize cannabis for consumer use.
Are you forecasting more countries to follow then, as you say, in the G20?
We are, and the reason why is this. What we've seen in Canada is the establishment of the most successful, largest, smoothest operating medical cannabis system 4 years ago. And with the establishment of that medical system, all of a sudden the stigma and the fear and uncertainty around cannabis kind of lifted, and cannabis became very much more mainstream. So that led naturally and logically to the removal of the criminal sanctions associated with cannabis. And we think that the same phenomenon will apply in a number of countries. So over the next several years, I suspect that we'll see a cascade of first medical cannabis systems opening worldwide, which is already happening. And I think that logically that will be followed by new consumer legalization systems opening up.
I imagine, though, medical will continue to be the key part of your business for years to come.
It's the biggest economic opportunity facing us right now. So we're excited about the launch of consumer in Canada. It's a very big market for us, but much, much larger is the 18 countries we're operating in around the world right now, and that medical system internationally will be huge.
Can you talk us through, because I know you just made an announcement recently that you received regulatory approval to ship products to Poland.
Yes.
This was seen as a bit of a milestone. Why is Poland a milestone?
Well, it's a populous country. It's got a population a little bit larger than Canada's. It's a system that needs to be supplied by outside suppliers because there are no domestic producers in Poland, and that's the case in virtually every country in the world, with the exception of Australia and a couple of others.
Now, you went live on the New York Stock Exchange last week. The stock's actually been falling, but along with the rest of the pot stocks. Why have we seen that? I mean, is it just going with the volatility of markets at the moment?
We're going to see continued volatility, I suspect, in this sector until the larger companies like Aurora and Cannabis and a few others can be valued based on our fundamentals.
Right.
So right now, all of the companies are being valued based on somebody's estimates on a multiple on future earnings. So that explains some of the volatility. Also, it's a brand new sector, and people don't know how it's going to behave. But the vector is upward. It's been taking off, obviously, over the last several years since we first listed publicly.
Because it wouldn't be covered by many analysts or anything yet, right? Research would be pretty light.
Actually, you'd be surprised. In Canada, there are a lot of analysts covering it. In New York, there are analysts covering it. In Europe, there are analysts who will be covering it. The institutional interest in this sector is exploding right now.
Really?
So I'm spending more and more of my time in the United States, in Europe. I just got back from Germany and London. So this is happening more and more, and I think you're going to see this become a mainstream industry over a very short period of time.
We better talk about Australia, because you're here for a conference in Australia. What do you think the industry looks like here in Australia?
It's going to be one of the global leaders, I think. There's a good regulatory system in place. It's comparable to Canada's medical cannabis system, I think, in many ways. We need to grow it faster right now. There's a fairly small number of patients in the system, but what I'm hearing is that the applications are rising very quickly, and I think you'll see a critical mass of Australian patients able to access medical cannabis products in a short period of time. And also, Australia is one of only 3 countries to actually have publicly listed cannabis companies with access to capital. So our partner, Can Group, for example, which is the leading licensed producer here in Australia, they have very big plans not just to supply the domestic market, but ultimately to be an exporter, which would be great for the Australian economy.
Well, I was going to say there's a lot of new entrants in this space in the Australian market in the past 6 to 12 months as regulations have obviously changed here. What do you think sets Can Group apart from the rest? Because you've obviously got, as you mentioned, your partnership, your ownership, 22.9% of Can Group. So why do you like Can Group?
For a number of reasons. First of all, they were a first mover. Second of all, they've got a very experienced management team. Peter Crock and his team are excellent. And also, they're partnering with us in the construction of what we call a Sky class facility for production of cannabis. And it's like nothing else that exists in the world. The first in this class is what we call Aurora Sky at Edmonton International Airport. And it's completely different from retrofitted greenhouses and indoor warehouses. It's an indoor facility with a glass roof with precise environmental control. controls. And we think that that is the production style of the 21st century. And so they're building their own facility, Can Group is, at Melbourne Airport. And I think it's going to be outstanding. I think it's going to be the class of Australia.
So what's your plan while you're here? I mean, is your plan to sort of see what Can Group's doing more broadly? I mean, meet more investors?
Yep.
What's your plan for the next sort of week?
So spending some time, obviously, first in Sydney for the Canatech conference, and also meeting with some institutional investors, and then off to Melbourne this afternoon. We're going to see the operations of Can Group and meet with some more institutions. This is a very bullish time, I would say, for the medical cannabis industry in Australia.
Well, it's one that's garnering a lot of attention here in Australia, so interesting to get your insights, Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
I'm glad to have done it.